Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Better Know a Highway here on Virtual Road Trip, where we take a closer look at the interstates and thoroughfares that cross this large country of ours. Today we have the big one, the longest interstate in the entire land, Interstate 90. Now, this is going to be a long video, so settle in, buckle up, and enjoy the ride. Let's get started. But before we get started, just wanted to remind you to like this video and subscribe to this channel. I always appreciate that. And make sure you check out the VRT Discord, where we have some interesting discussions, as well as announcements on new videos and upcoming live streams with GeoGuessr and such. I hope to get those started again real soon, so the link is in the description below. Be sure to check that out. And now that that's out of the way, on to the video. Interstate 90, the longest interstate in the United States. At a total distance of 3,021 miles, it stretches from coast to coast and travels through a total of 13 states. Many of its sections in the eastern U.S. are tolled and follow concurrently with throughways and turnpikes that predate the interstate system. The first of these is the Massachusetts Turnpike, or MassPike for short, which proceeds through the entire state for 138 miles. Starting in the east and heading west, I-90 along with the MassPike begins at the entrance of Logan International Airport in Boston, Massachusetts. Quickly after, 90 proceeds through a series of tunnels under both Boston Harbor and the downtown area, while having a major intersection with I-93, which are all parts of the Big Dig mega project. Now on a western heading, I-90 continues through Boston, passing right next to local landmarks such as Fenway Park, and eventually leaves the city into its western suburbs, and passing the state's second largest city, Worcester, just to its south. In this area, 90 junctions with the major north-south route, I-95, as well as the outer I-495 beltway and the eastern terminus of I-84. The remainder of the MassPike is through rural areas of the state, with the exception of the Springfield area, which I-90 passes just to the north of, while intersecting with I-91. The westernmost part of the route passes through the Berkshire Mountains, reaching I-90's maximum elevation in the eastern U.S., before eventually heading down into New York State near the town of West Stockbridge. I-90's journey through New York is slightly complex, as it traverses the widest part of the state. Upon entering, I-90 becomes concurrent with the New York State Thruway. More specifically, its Berkshire Connector section, a special part of the thruway system separate from the main line. 90 follows this tolled section for 2 exits before briefly leaving the thruway system, one of the 2 toll-free sections for I-90 in the state. This part heads northwest towards Albany, New York, crossing the Hudson River before entering the metro area, with numerous exits leading to the city. Soon after, I-90 reaches a major junction with I-87, which brings traffic north from New York City. Here, the main line of the New York State Thruway transfers from 87 to 90 at exit 24, and 90 will carry this designation for the long journey across the state, soon leaving the Albany area and following the Mohawk Valley and the Erie Canal west. Throughout its long run within New York, I-90 provides access to numerous upstate cities, such as Utica and Syracuse, where 90 junctions with I-81. Then further west to Rochester, the Finger Lakes area to the south, and finally, the great city of Buffalo. Passing the state's second largest city just to its east, I-90 has its second toll-free section, with a brief gap in the thruway for several exits, before resuming to the south for the remainder of the state. This part parallels the southern shore of Lake Erie for its last 64 miles, then entering Pennsylvania near the town of Ripley. I-90's time in Pennsylvania is brief, being the shortest duration of any state along the route, at only 46 miles. Moving slightly away from the lakeshore, it passes just south of the city of Erie, Pennsylvania, and junctions with I-79, which itself heads directly into Erie. Not long after 90 leaves this area, it quickly crosses into Ohio. The Ohio section of I-90 is also slightly complex, With a total distance of 244 miles and a 142-mile tolled section in the western half of the state, which is part of the Ohio Turnpike. Shortly after entering the most northeastern part of the state, I-90 reaches the Cleveland metro area, soon entering the city proper and providing direct access to downtown, while passing several notable sites, as well as a junction with I-77. Moving further west, I-90, along with I-80, passes near several lakeside cities such as Sandusky and Toledo, having a junction with I-75 at the latter, as well as numerous small towns. This section is mostly rural and relatively flat, which will be the norm for many more miles. After some time, I-90 finally reaches its next state, Indiana, where the Ohio Turnpike ends and the Indiana Toll Road begins. At 156 miles, I-90 cuts across the north end of the state. It is concurrent with I-80 the entire way, and, since it's called the Indiana Toll Road, it is, of course, tolled. Interesting note, it is so far north in the state that some sections come within less than a mile from the Michigan border. There are two major interstate junctions in Indiana, both providing a route south to the capital, Indianapolis, with I-69 in the east and I-65 in the west, just south of the city of Gary, Indiana. Also in this area is another junction with I-94, the first of several with this particular route. Also, I-90's long concurrency with I-80 finally ends in this area. A notable section of I-90 in the state passes through the city of South Bend and near the campus of Notre Dame University, providing long-range access to the school. Shortly past Gary, Indiana, I-90 enters Illinois and the Chicago metro area. I-90 enters Illinois at its most populated part, traveling a total of 123 miles through the state in a northwest direction. Known in this area as the Chicago Skyway, it merges with the aforementioned I-94 and passes by downtown, having several more major junctions with other interstates while passing stadiums and landmarks. Once past the downtown corridor, 90 and 94 split just short of O'Hare International Airport, with 90 continuing in a due west direction. From here, it navigates the northern Chicago suburbs, and eventually, more rural lands into central Illinois. When reaching the city of Rockford, Illinois, and a junction with I-39, I-90 makes a sharp turn northward and heads directly for the border with Wisconsin, to enter its next state. At a length of 108 miles, the Wisconsin portion of I-90 is somewhat uneventful, passing through mostly open country terrain dotted with small towns, with the exception of a few small cities, including the state capital of Madison, where 90 once again merges with I-94, this time for a much longer trek of 92 miles to the northwest, having a junction with I-39 along the way. Once this concurrency ends, I-90 turns due west for its final section in Wisconsin and heads towards the city of La Crosse, after which it crosses the Mississippi River and enters the next state, Minnesota. Cutting a path across the most southern part of the state, the Minnesota portion of I-90 is also rather uneventful, besides the treacherous winter weather, of course. First, it approaches the outskirts of the city of Rochester, the largest city it will serve in this state. Then, after a slight jog south, 90 turns due west once again for the rest of the way, passing another small city, Albert Lea, and having a junction with a major north-south I-35. The rest of I-90 within Minnesota is almost completely rural, with only small towns being served, until finally reaching the border with South Dakota and completing the 275-mile journey within the state. I-90 crosses the entirety of South Dakota for a long 412 miles, reaching the largest city in the state almost immediately. 90 passes just north of Sioux Falls, with a spur and I-29 serving the city proper. Once past the city, we enter the vast northern plains. Open sky for as far as the eye can see. Although there is not much out here, there are some interesting spots, such as crossing the Missouri River and passing roughly 32 miles south of the state capital of Pierre. 90 eventually reaches more varied terrain in the western part of the state and arrives at the Rapid City region and the Black Hills. Although I-90 does not cross directly through the range, it hugs the northern edge as it passes the city of Sturgis, famous for its large motorcycle rally. I-90 enters its next state, Wyoming, for a 208-mile trip. Like the rest of the state, this portion of 90 is mostly remote and empty, albeit with striking views along the way. A few small cities dot the landscape, such as Gillette and Sheridan. Also, there is one major junction with I-25 near the town of Buffalo, Wyoming. I-90 makes a curved shape throughout the state, first starting west, then slowly turning north, where it enters its next state of Montana. I-90 travels through the Big Sky State for a massive 552 miles, by far the most of any state along the route. Entering near its southeastern corner, I-90 first makes its way towards the city of Billings, alongside the Yellowstone River. Here, it has a final junction with the western terminus of I-94, and continues the former's path through the valley and city. Heading further west, the landscape becomes more mountainous and elevation increases. 90 passes through small cities such as Bozeman and eventually Butte, which it reaches after crossing the Continental Divide at Homestake Pass. Elevation, 6,393 feet. I-90 then intersects with the northern terminus of I-15, a major north-south route that leads to cities such as Salt Lake City and eventually Las Vegas. Next, it heads northwest and passes through the city of Missoula and its surrounding communities. Afterward, 90 snakes through ever narrower valleys and eventually into Alberton Gorge, along the Coeur d'Alene River. Elevation once again increases until I-90 reaches Lookout Pass at 4,710 feet. There, it arrives at the state border and crosses into Idaho. I-90 crosses Idaho at its narrow northern panhandle for a total of 73 miles. It gradually descends from the mountain pass towards the city of Coeur d'Alene, which is the main attraction in this portion, as well as the nearby Harrison Lake, with other small towns along the way, and eventually an area of farmland. Quickly, however, I-90 crosses into its final state, Washington, for a total distance of 297 miles. Right after crossing into the Evergreen State, 90 reaches the Spokane metro area and crosses the city itself soon after. Once past Spokane, we enter the central Badlands of Washington State, a mostly rural stretch with sections of farmland and small communities. One of the highlights of this area is the crossing of the Columbia River, after which elevations once again begin increasing as 90 heads towards the well-known Snoqualmie Pass, crossing the Cascade Range at a modest 3,015 feet and heading back down into the populated Seattle metro area. Once reaching its eastern suburbs, I-90 crosses a pair of floating bridges that traverse Lake Washington. Next, a short tunnel brings 90 into Seattle proper, where it has its final major junction, this time with the West Coast I-5. Then immediately after, I-95 reaches its western terminus as it exits towards the port of Seattle near the Puget Sound, finally ending its epic 3,021-mile run across the entire country. Well, we finally made it to the end of our long journey today, which makes sense since it is the longest interstate in the country, and I thank you for sticking it out with me to the end. I'm sure I missed a few details here and there along the way, but this video is long enough as it is, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Before we end, I just wanted to once again remind you to please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate that. And make sure you check out the VRT Discord. The link is down below in the description. Definitely some interesting things going on there. So yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of Better Know a Highway. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed and learned a little something along the way. And as always, enjoy the ride. And up next, Interstate 89. I'll see you then.